Here, thank you, Pat. Would everybody please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
It's a different login screen.
Yeah,
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Switch users?
yeah.
Is everyone's screen working?
No.
No? Okay.
None on this side? Are you guys all logged in?
I am not logged in.
No, it's a different screen.
But this thing's on.
I am going to go commando. Well, whatever.
Oh, I forgot.
That means
TMI,
Where's our
Doesn't matter.
Is that him tonight? Can you log us in?
What is it?
Did I do it right?
Pardon me, friends, we're having technical difficulties.
Am I wrong there? Here you go.
Board member?
Oh, that's how
I
you
got
do
it.
it?
Help
Oh,
on that. Is yours not working either, too?
I've got it.
I was logging in.
You need a password.
I'm
EDU.
No, I've got a login.
Joplin, EDU
I'm
one.
at I'm at a different screen.
EDU 1.
There we go. Thank you.
I don't know to let us.
Thank you.
So we're the 18 switches or?
Yeah, I keep-
We're showing off over there. We're the 18.
That's why my ITV don't like messing with the computers.
Capitalized.
No.
Nope.
Uppercase J.
Is it an
yeah,
uppercase?
J.
Okay.
Gosh, Doc.
I told you.
I can't believe you did that.
Ta-da.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll move to approval of the agenda. I've been asked to move from item 10 from the consent agenda to the regular agenda. Item 10 from the consent agenda to the regular agenda. Aside from that, are there any changes to our agenda? I'd accept a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Thank you, Derek. Is there a second?
Wait,
Oh, pardon me.
I'm wondering about taking 8 out, just to discuss that a little bit.
8. Item 8 also to be removed from the consent agenda to the regular agenda.
Yeah, just so we can discuss it.
So the motion is now items 8 and 10 to be moved to the regular agenda. Is that your motion, Derek?
That'd be
Thank you.
my
Is there a
motion.
second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lori. I don't know, did we lose Pat?
She's here. She's up.
Oh, thank you, Pat. I didn't even see you. You were sneaking over there. So I just want to make sure you were getting our motions and seconds. 8
And
and
eight.
8 and 10. 8 and 10. It was moved by Derek and seconded by Lori. Please vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you all. So that brings us to our reports. Here, I've got a few things to recognize here. I'd like to start with our National History Day winners. Joplin Schools was represented by a group of talented students at this year's National History Day competition. Yeah, do you have that on the? There you go. It'll sneak on there. It was held June 9 through 13 at the University of Maryland in College Park. Over 3,000 students from the United States and around the world participated in the 4-day competition. 2 outstanding students from Joplin earned a national award. Those 2 are Aubrey Christenberry, a junior at Joplin High School. She was in 3rd place for her individual performance, A Blessing or Curse, The Triumph and Tragedy, or thalidomide. I don't know how to pronounce that. I apologize.
Thalidomide.
Thalidomide. Thank you. But Aubrey couldn't be with us tonight, but we definitely applaud her success. We are fortunate to have with us tonight Joseph Schuler. He's an 8th grader from South Middle School. He finished 3rd place individually in a documentary for the bridge over Funchalen Pass. Did I pronounce that right? Funchalen. Man, I need all the help I can get, don't I? Okay, the only option for retreat. So Joseph has been invited back to the D.C. area in October to attend a Ken Burns Award ceremony for a special screening of Joseph's documentary. Congratulations, Joseph.
And it looks like we can watch that on YouTube if we'd like.
Well, we're going to watch it.
We're going to watch it right now.
Okay, awesome.
In December of 1950, the United Nations forces fighting in the Korean War tragically suffered heavy losses at the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir. Forced to retreat, the surviving troops bravely fought overwhelming communist Chinese forces, record-breaking freezing temperatures, and extremely rugged terrain, only to have their one escape route, the bridge over the Funcheon Pass, destroyed by the Chinese soldiers. Military engineers made history by flying in pieces to repair the damaged bridge, thus allowing the retreating UN forces to triumphantly escape and evacuate their dead, wounded, vehicles, artillery, and weapons, and continue their retreat to the sea. In 1945, at the end of World War II, the defeated Japanese army was forced to give up control of Korea, leaving the leadership of post-war Korea in question. To facilitate the Japanese surrender, the United States and the Soviet Union agreed upon an arbitrary line along the 38th parallel, which temporarily divided the Korean peninsula in half. In the years following, Cold War tensions grew between the Soviet Union and the United States, and the temporary dividing line between North and South Korea became the more permanent border. Joseph Stalin, the Soviet premier, helped establish North Korea as a communist state, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. He set up a communist leader, Kim Il-sung, trained North Korean troops, and provided Soviet weapons and artillery. A new communist government in nearby China pledged to support the Soviet Union and North Korea and promised to send forces to aid North Korea if needed. Fearing the spread of communism in Asia, the United Nations pledged to support South Korea and helped create the Republic of Korea with Syngman Lee as its president. American troops already stationed in parts of Asia after World War II helped train a South Korean army, but did not leave weapons or manpower there. On June 25, 1950, North Korean forces crossed the 30th parallel into South Korea in an effort to unite the Korean peninsula under communist rule. South Korea was unprepared and unable to stop the invasion. This prompted the UN to retaliate by sending a military force consisting of troops from several countries and led by the United States to defend South Korea and its new democracy.
Korea is a small country, thousands of miles away. But what is happening there is important to every American. On Sunday, June 25th, communist forces attacked the Republic of Korea. Free nations must be on their guard, more than ever before, against this kind of sneak attack. We are united in detesting communists. We know that the cost of freedom is high, but we are determined to preserve our freedom no matter what the cost.
The UN troops held off the advancing North Korean army at Busan and successfully took back the South Korean cities of Incheon and Seoul, the capital. Commanders of the UN forces believed that Chinese interference was unlikely and sent the troops north of the 30th parallel to pursue the retreating North Korean army. However, as the UN troops moved north, China feared a possible invasion across its southern border and sent reinforcements to North Korea to stop the UN advance. UN forces entered the Chosin Reservoir, where they were ambushed by huge numbers of Chinese soldiers. Greatly outnumbered, the UN forces suffered massive casualties and were ordered to retreat to the port city of Hunan, and then to completely evacuate by sea back to South Korea. They underestimated the overwhelming numbers of Chinese soldiers coming to aid the North Korean army were too much for the UN forces to fight.
First wave's coming. Hundreds of them. Walked up these young boys. We knocked them down. And here comes another one right behind them. And they got a little closer. And we knocked them down. And here comes another one. And they got a lot closer. And we knocked them down.
The only option for retreat from the Chosin Reservoir was through the city of Kodori, and then over the treacherous ox cart trail through the Tibet Mountains, 78 miles to Hunan.
The UN forces retreated through narrow mountain passes that at times were just single-lane gravel roads clinging to almost sheer cliffs. The negative temperatures and blizzard conditions didn't help as they transported so many dead and wounded on trucks and tanks down the mountains. They fought frostbite, frozen rations, frozen artillery, and Chinese shooting down at them from above as they marched through what the British Royal Marines called Hellfire Valley. On December 4th, U.S. Marine General Oliver Smith learned that the Chinese had destroyed a crucial part of their retreat path by bombing out a 30-foot gap in the bridge crossing the Funchalen Pass. The bridge spanned a 1,500-foot deep and 80-foot wide gorge that was part of a gatehouse over penstocks running down from the chosen reservoir. Without bridge repairs, the soldiers could walk single file across the bridge, but vehicles, artillery, and the dead and wounded would have to be left behind at the mercy of the Chinese. General Smith's answer was to leave no one behind. The 1st Marine Division would come out fighting, with all of its men, its wounded, its dead, and its equipment. They would come out as Marines, or they would not come out at all. General Oliver P. Smith. Lieutenant Colonel Partridge of the Marine Engineer Battalion flew aerial reconnaissance to get a better view of the problem and then propose a solution. The gap could be bridged by 4 8-foot-long M2 treadway bridge pieces, each weighing 2,500 pounds. However, the military had never airdropped such pieces before. Because time was running out for the retreating forces stuck in the mountains, only one test drop was performed. It was unsuccessful. Still, the order came in. We have no tomorrow. Have those bridge sections properly rigged tonight, and in the morning, we will have them dropped at Connery. Marine Corps Engineering Lieutenant. The engineers adjusted the number of parachutes used to make the drop and hoped for successful landings, while Partridge prepared 8 sections to be airlifted in to increase the chances of 4 pieces landing intact. On December 7, 8 brand new C-119 flying boxcar airplanes, each carrying 1 bridge section, flew in despite the mountainous terrain and winter weather, and dropped the pieces around the city of Connery. 6 bridge pieces landed intact. 1 landed behind Chinese lines and another was broken. Brockway trucks that could hold 2 bridge sections each were used to transport the pieces to the bridge site. Advanced military units led the way and had to rid the hills surrounding the bridge site of Chinese before the bridge could be repaired. It took American military engineers less than 3 hours to install the abutments and the treadways capable of holding 50-ton tanks. That night, engineers used flashlights to guide the vehicles across the bridge. It was a painfully slow process. Tanks and jeeps had only an inch of clearance on each side as they rolled across the treadways. Frozen but finally moving, the UN forces, along with 1,400 vehicles, safely crossed the bridge over the next 2 days and continued their retreat to Hunan. After their escape, engineers blew up the bridge to prohibit a rear attack from the Chinese. Without American perseverance and ingenuity, a serious delay in a tactical retreat could have turned deadly. The tragedy of defeat, along with time, terrain, weather, and enemy fire, were all working against the UN forces as they clung to hope. Hope that planes could fly into the mountains and make successful drops. Hope that American engineers could repair the broken bridge. And hope that all could safely make it across a deep gorge on a temporary structure. Military engineers triumphed by saving their comrades that day. They also made military history by successfully airdropping bridge pieces for the first time, an engineering feat that has since been used in other places, in other wars, and even today. The fighting in Korea lasted for another 2.5 years, until both sides agreed on a ceasefire. Those soldiers who survived the battle at the chosen reservoir and then the harrowing retreat were sent back to fight alongside South Korean and UN forces, to fight the spread of communism, and to fight for freedom on a small peninsula in Asia.
If communism isn't stopped, it will eventually consume the whole world. That's the reason it had to stop in a little place.
The successful repair at Funchalen Pass literally bridged the gap between certain death for the UN forces and survival, between the horrible tragedy at the chosen reservoir and the triumphant escape and evacuation at Hunan. The bridge allowed those surviving soldiers to see another day, to fight another battle, and most importantly, to live long enough to tell the stories of what really happened at Chosin in the mountains of North Korea that winter of 1950.
History Day says that over 600,000 kids worldwide, it's not just our country, but countries in Asia are there, Guam, Puerto Rico, participate in History Days at least the school level. 3,000 get to attend nationals. We had 5 students from Joplin between middle school and high school attending, and Joseph was number 3 out of 103 documentaries.
Wow.
Really cool. Continuing with celebrations, that'll be tough to beat. Bus camp. Joplin Schools Transportation Department held its first bus camp this year on Saturday, June 22nd for all incoming kindergartners. The camp was organized to teach our young Eagles about bus safety before school starts. Their adventures included T-shirts, meeting Eddie the Eagle, learning bus safety, learning how to cross the street safely, free fingerprinting photos by the Joplin Police Department, bus evacuation exercise with the Joplin Fire Department, taking a ride on the bus, games, and goodie bags.
And they are here, and there's some other pictures too.
There's some additional pictures as we keep going.
They're here.
We can see Eddie the Eagle there, bus rides, safety training. We'd also like to recognize Eloise O'Reilly, who's in the audience tonight. She was one of the organizers of the bus camp, which I understand was a terrific success. Great job, Eloise. Where are you?
And she's
Yeah, anybody who is connected with the bus stand,
Curtis and
please
Robin
sign.
are back there as well.
Yeah.
If they want to
Bus
stand.
camper.
And I will say we had 193 students and parents attend on Saturday. And this group, it was really a grassroots effort. They put in a lot of time and energy, and it was a great first bus camp that they look at expanding for next year.
Great job.
Tell them about the podcast thing.
I might just add just a note that on here or not, but today Eloise and I were asked to do an interview with the School Bus Fleet magazine. California is a national magazine, so we did that. I let her do most of the talking since it was her dream a year ago, and it came to fruition this last week. And very good interview, and we've got a link to that I'll send everybody later. Thanks, Sarah. But it turned out really nice, so we'll get national publication.
Great job.
Jonah's proud.
Next slide, the power of community. A huge shout out to James River Church of Joplin for its project partnership event where they had 140 community members, gave Dunaweg Education Center a makeover. The transformation included landscaping, painting, cleanup, and repairs. The renovated center will be the home for Beacon and CBSS, which stands for Communication, Behavior, and Social Skills Programming. Students and staff will enjoy the wonderful new learning spaces in August. I can tell you, I was there very briefly, and watching that group of church members get together and just take charge of that building and give it a makeover was inspiring. And our district is better for it, and we really appreciate their investment in our schools. So big shout out to James River Church.
You should thank them.
Excellence in education. The Joplin Area Chamber of Commerce has recognized excellence in education by awarding the Golden Apple Awards for the last 34 years in the Joplin area. Each year, teachers are nominated for the award by students, parents, and peers for their professionalism, activities in the classroom and beyond, and their ability to inspire students to reach their potential. 3 outstanding Joplin teachers were awarded Golden Apples this year. Congratulations to Betsy James, kindergarten to 2nd grade at Cecil Floyd Elementary, Lauren Frieden, 3rd to 5th grade at Stapleton Elementary, and Heather Van Otterloo, 6th grade to 8th grade at South Middle School. Congratulations, teachers. Improving performance and leadership. In early June, Joplin schools custodians and building engineers attended a training sponsored by DESE at South Middle School. The training was specifically designed for staff responsible for facilities and those who also manage facilities maintenance employees. Scheduled activities were designed to improve performance, leadership, and management skills. Several staff members sharpened their communication skills with public speaking activity. Offering our building engineers training in management and leadership provides them with new tools to improve the climate and culture for the employees they manage. Great job, folks. I believe that brings us to our superintendent's data report.
Yes, and the first one is health and dental update with Dr. Langford.
We continue to be proud of the progress of the health and dental plan. As you know, we transitioned October the 1st to a new plan, which resulted in savings to the district as far as premiums were concerned, and savings to the participants as far as family coverages and so forth. And so far, it's continued to go well. If you look at your spreadsheets that are attached, if you look back over the last 24 months, one thing that we're very pleased with, and primarily pleased with because it indicates, generally speaking, a healthy staff, but we've only had 4 months where we spent more out of our health fund than we had in revenue, that we deficit spent. So overall, the plan continues. We are on target now to continue to invest our funds, and we have a few $1 million invested that we hope we can keep investing because I believe this year, as a result of the progress of our plan and the success of the plan right now, we're not having to do an increase in our health premiums. So,
Very good.
Thank you, Doctor.
And next are financial statements, right back to Dr. Langford.
and again, you're given a lot of information prior to the meeting, the financial statements that we have. Of course, you get a full listing of every penny that's been spent, but the single-page comparison of where we were a year ago is what we like to look at as we're closing out the year. Next month, we will bring you the final month statement as far as the current fiscal year, but everything continues to be on track. And I just say that we would be glad to answer any questions about the financial statement as far as revenues and things of this nature. And when we get to later in the agenda, we can talk a little bit more about the budget. But we're very pleased with the way this year is winding up.
Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Langford at this time? We're moving on to public comments regarding agenda items. Tonight we have a couple of folks who are going to talk to us. Mrs. Sarah Ditto. Hi, Miss Sarah. How are you? I've known her only my entire life, so. Ms. Ditto, when you approach the standing microphone, please give your name and address. Please do not identify any district personnel or student by name or by any other identifiable information. And you're supposed to have 3 minutes to speak your mind.
Let's see if I can you? That doesn't sound like it.
Just to let you know, that's not necessarily an amplifying microphone. I think it's a microphone that basically is picked up by the cameras, but I think we can hear you when you speak.
Okay, I'll see if I can speak up. I'm an old person, and that's why I'm here, because I've seen a lot of history in Joplin come down and around. I remember the 40s and 50s when downtown was just bustling and busy and humming. And I remember the 60s when we got a mall and downtown emptied out. And about 30 years later, we looked around and said, this doesn't represent us. We need something that says, this is us, this is Joplin. And we turned to our downtown again. And we took those tin fronts off the building, and we found there was beautiful brick and workmanship that we will never see again. And we began to celebrate our local merchants and our local restaurants and our local culture. And we began to build our downtown, and we went from mall to small because that's what we needed to do to have our own personality. So how does that affect the schools? Well, I'll tell you, because recently the city went into East Town, which is our original town before there was a Joplin, to find some history. And what did they find? There's nothing there except some old memories and some old photographs. There's no heart, there's no building, there's no core. There are no schools, because long gone is Lincoln School and Washington School and East Junior High School. And what do we find when we go in the west part of town? Off 7th Street, off our old Route 66, we find that there are some families there that are struggling. And what those children need is something stable and secure, so that no matter what's happening in their other life, they have a place to go that they can count on, and teachers that know them, that are going to give them comfort and continuity, because they know the neighborhood communities there. And what do we find in the north part of town? Well, we find that there are families willing to come in and buy old houses and maintain them and improve them, because part of what they like is that their kids can walk down a shady lane to a neighborhood school. Now, I know in education that there is a book out called Johnny Doesn't Walk to School. And I know why, because there are a lot of places that it's not reasonable, but not in our neighborhood, because from morning to night, there are people out. They are biking, they are jogging, they are pushing their strollers, they're walking their dogs. We have a walkable neighborhood. And so I'm saying that I know that we need schools to be safe and secure. That's a mission of the school. But I also know that if that goes too far, we lose some freedom, we lose some individuality, and we lose some choice. And we are asking to have a choice. Now, what I'm afraid of is that if you pull those schools out of those neighborhoods, then it's going to weaken them. And the very thing that the city is trying to accomplish by undergirding the old neighborhoods and making them viable is exactly what won't happen. And I think that history may repeat itself. And maybe 15 years from now, there'll be another school board sitting here, and they'll say, you know, maybe new and bigger wasn't right. Maybe what we really need is a small neighborhood school. Now, I know that money talks, and it has a loud voice, and I expect to hear it say, you know, we only have so much, and we've got to spread it out. But we are all taxpayers, and if the school board decides that they need a new school out in the south part of town, then we are all for it. So I think the same thing applies when we need something. We may need some extra in our area, because I think that we have a vision that says that we think we know what would be good for our community, for our neighborhood. So I think that we need to have the school board and people realize that we are your good supporters, and we are your patrons, and we are taxpayers, and we are saying, protect our interests and help us to have what is the best for our neighborhood.
Thank you, Mrs. Ditto, very much. Next, we have Tracy Horton. Tracy, again, we ask that you approach the microphone, Please give your name and address, and please do not identify any district personnel or student by name or by any other identifiable information. Our comments are supposed to be kept to 3 minutes. I'm sorry for interrupting Mrs. Ditto, but she had had her time, and I'll do my best to let you say whatever you have to say, but try to keep it to 3 minutes.
Sure, I'm gonna set my timer. I'm not texting someone right now.
You're okay.
First of all, I think it's important to acknowledge, because Sarah and I were sitting watching a baseball game, that there's a dozen other places that we could be tonight, but we're all choosing to be here. And I think that's really important. I am not like Mrs. Ditto. I cannot give you dozens of years of history, but I can give you the history and the culture from our past school year and kind of what we have done this past school year to create at Columbia Elementary. I forgot to state my name. Tracy Horton, 808 North Jackson, Joplin, Missouri. Sorry, just realized that. But I just thought what would be better than data, what would be better than what you already know is what I've seen and what I've experienced. We created community nights at our school. And I bring this cowbell, this gorgeous cowbell, because this was what we used to kick off our very first annual Friendsgiving. And we had over 300 people attend. And I couldn't believe it. And Miss Christina could tell you, we almost ran out of food. We had like a bowl of noodles left. So that's the first thing. The second thing that we did was we did this night where we only allowed fathers to come in and to read to students, and we just spread throughout our building. And dads, we called it Pajamuary, labeled by a 4th grade student. It was brilliant. And anybody who wanted to come dressed in their pajamas, I'm not going to wear my pajamas, but just believe me that I did. And we partnered with the library and did a Pajamuary night, and only fathers read to their children, to other people's children. And it was super powerful to see several men in the room feel that they could be a part of the education and the classroom experience. The final thing that we did as far as a community event was there's a local author. He actually used to teach for Joplin, but he's in Carl Junction now. His author name is Izzy B. And we did this Imaginary Fiends night. And he came, and it was crazy and incredible. And we did stations, and we did it for like $50, and it was magical. And it just showed everyone at our school and in the community that it doesn't cost a lot of money to do these things. It just takes time, which is our most valuable resource. Finally, what I'll say, I know I need to close, but what I wanted to say is I think that walkability is important for our schools, for our school in particular, and our landlocked school. I know it needs attention. I know the structure has issues. That's not that I'm pretending it doesn't. But to see, we had 60 kids out of 200 show up for running club. Then we partnered with Stapleton, and oh, there's my timer. Basically, what I'm saying is that it's a beautiful thing to have access to your school as a child after school hours, which are the most formative anyway. So thank you for listening to me, and I've been praying that you guys make a great decision. I'm not jealous of you in any way, but thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Ms. Horton. We're always happy to hear comments from the public. We're glad to be engaged with folks, and thank you for spending your time talking to us this evening. That brings us next to our consent agenda. Just a reminder to the board, we have removed items 8 and 10. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Derek. It's been moved.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. It's moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as amended. Please vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes, that moves us to the regular agenda, which is our long-term facility committee recommendation to the Board of Education. I'd like to thank the members of the committee that are here tonight. I believe I had a list of those folks somewhere. I'd like to recognize them initially. Sally Beard. I don't know who all's here, so I'm just going to read everybody's names and thank that committee for their service. The committee included Sally Beard, Troy Bolander, Meg Carlisle, Todd Chenault, Josh Jatar, Chris Arisman, Ron Gatz, Dr. Stephen Gilbreth, Savannah Goad, Chad Greer, Carlos Haley, Matt Harding, Matt Hyatt, Stacy Iorio, Steve Jones, Brent Jordan, Dr. Melinda Moss, Dave Pettit, Dr. Carrie Saketa, Kim Satterley, David Weaver, Dayton Whitehead, and I also served on that committee. I'd like to thank the committee for their efforts.
Yes,
Who's going to come up and speak to us? Hello, gentlemen. If you'll please introduce yourself to the board and to your public. And
My name is Josh Keysar.
I'm David Weaver.
welcome.
And each at your
Each of-
seats,
yeah.
you have your.
Each of us have a folder, and it contains, I believe, a PowerPoint that is about to be shown. So I don't know if David or Josh is going to.
Good evening. My name is David Weaver. To my left is Josh Tatar. We want to thank you for the opportunity to serve. It's been an honor and a privilege, and thank you very much for that. We are here tonight to represent the Joplin Schools Long-Term Facilities Committee in presenting our findings and our recommendations. Our task, as we understood it, was to gather information, to listen to opinions, and to present our findings and recommendations to the Joplin School Board for their consideration. The authority to act on these recommendations rests with the Joplin School Board. Tonight, our format will be to present our purpose, procedures, findings, and then recommendations. And Josh will begin with our purpose.
Thank you all for having us. The purpose of the committee, the Long-Term Facilities Committee, was formed so that the Joplin School District could gain valuable input to create a clear picture of what facility improvement projects need to be completed and to ensure that all Joplin students have access to safe, quality, and equitable learning environments district-wide. In order to meet the objective, the committee utilized the district's 5-year strategic plan to help guide decision-making so that the Joplin schools will ensure a safe and nurturing environment that supports the physical needs, the emotional needs, and the behavioral needs of all the students. Joplin schools will demonstrate fiscal responsibility, supporting high-performing classrooms by increasing efficiencies district-wide using a balanced deployment of resources. There's 22 committee members that Sherrick just read off, but they were made up by community members, parents, an architect, Board of Education officers, staff, past Board of Education members, district administration, faculty, engineer, city planner, a student, principals, and the facility director.
The parameters of the committee's work was to focus on facility equality for all grade levels of the district students, to focus on 21st century learning concepts with adequate minimum standards for educational environments, to reflect bond and other funding scenarios that minimize taxpayer burden, to take into consideration the future growth of our community, to eliminate all mobile classrooms, to gain stakeholder input for future new construction and facility addition decisions, to ensure that funding over time supports the sequence of school improvements. Some of the resources used by our committee were the School Facilities Condition and Assessment Priorities Report for the calendar years 2020 to 2025. We also looked at a facility size and capacity analysis. This was for all schools, noting that the high school and middle schools were either new or have been recently remodeled. And we particularly looked at the elementary buildings and facility size and capacity analysis. We reviewed the operational cost per elementary building per student. We had a presentation on climate and culture results. We looked at a demographic study report that was completed in this calendar year, 2019. Other resources used by the committee were the facility standards presented to the Board of Education in 2011, the financial condition for long-term capital planning. We also looked at a cost analysis for remodeling and new construction options. We considered engineering reports. We considered historical documents. We looked at geotechnical maps, and we toured many of the district facilities. That was a great pleasure to see these buildings. Some of our preliminary findings were that there is currently a robust process in place for the allocation of maintenance and capital expenditures by the district. The annual capital outlay funds appear to be insufficient, though, for major new construction. It was noted that there appears to be adequate funding to maintain the buildings and for some improvements. However, for new construction, the funding was insufficient. The district is currently a good steward of our facilities. It was apparent to all of us as we toured these buildings that they were both clean and well maintained, and we appreciate that and the people that are active in keeping those well maintained and clean. Another interesting note was that there appears to be a declining enrollment in some of the attendance zones in the district. In looking at a few of the buildings, it was noted that significant structural engineers currently exist at Columbia Elementary Schools. When we toured Kelsey Norman Elementary School and Columbia, we noticed that there are still modular units in use at those buildings. We also looked at a presentation on district finances, and it was noted that there appears to be bonding capacity for a no tax increase bond issue. Another interesting statistic was the cost per student at our different buildings, particularly elementary buildings, and we noticed that the cost per student varied widely by different school buildings in the district, and some of these appeared to be due to the age of the building, the school location, the size, and the student enrollment. We were presented with the proposed capital outlay projects for calendar year 2020 to 2025. These are already items that are in planning for the next 5 years. However, the capital outlay projects do not include any new construction or any total renovation or a combination of those things. In looking at the capital outlay project, some of the highlights that we've noted were energy and cost-saving products. For example, LED lighting across the district to reduce electric bills, HVAC systems, heating and air conditioning system upgrades to become more efficient, a window replacement with more energy efficient windows. We looked at safety and security upgrades at our buildings, and we noticed that there was a plan for expanded surveillance systems in the buildings, video cameras and other such items. There's a plan for asbestos removal district-wide and a new lock system for the classrooms. Also, we looked at major system replacement cycles and building-specific needs. The first building that the committee wanted to focus on, as we look at tonight, is Kelsey Norman Elementary School. And as you can see here, there is a modular unit still in use. We were able to tour this unit, and it was surprising some of the things that we learned while we were in that building. Some of the concerns that a modular classroom present are concerns with weather, as the students have to leave the building of Kelsey Norman and walk through that corridor. Sometimes it's windy, it's cold, it's rainy. It's possible for students to get wet in that short jog to the school. Also, it's difficult to adequately control temperature in a modular unit. Energy efficiency, safety, accessibility, all were issues that were noted during our tour of this facility. Also at Kelsey Norman, we noted that there were many classrooms being shared. Specials such as art and music are currently sharing classrooms. Tutoring and practice rooms for students. Teachers needing to work with students on an individual basis in small groups just didn't have the space to be able to adequately perform their function, and so we felt there was insufficient space for these items. Also, lack of adequate space for school counseling programs. I believe it was at Kelsey Norman that buildings no larger than the size, rooms no longer the size of a closet were used for counseling, and that was interesting. So when we looked at Kelsey Norman, the first recommendation that the long-term facilities would like to make to the Joplin School Board of Education would be regarding Kelsey Norman Elementary School. And the recommendation that the committee would like for the school board to consider is to construct a new addition to Kelsey Norman to include additional classroom space, offices, flexible learning spaces, and eliminate these modular units and provide equitable programming space. We had an architect come up with some preliminary cost estimates, and the estimated cost for this recommendation would be $2.875 million. The next building that the Long-Term Facilities Committee wanted to focus on was West Central. This is out on West 7th Street. And the road in front is a 5-lane road, and you'll notice the distance from the entrance to the school to the road. It's not very far. And should a student leave that door somehow, it's a very short distance to a very busy road. Some of our priority concerns with West Central Elementary were safety concerns due to the size and proximity to a high traffic area. We also noted, as we reviewed best practices and standards, that 900 square foot is a desired size of a classroom. At West Central Elementary School, it appeared that there was an average of 651 square feet per classroom, so a little small compared to what current standards are. Also, we noted that the building was inequitable given the 21st century learning options for students. For example, flexible learning spaces were limited as well as non-existent. Collaboration and project-based learnings, these do not exist that we were able to find at West Central Elementary School. Also, Americans with Disability Act, known as ADA, there were accessibility issues at the school that we felt needed to be addressed. Other priority concerns for West Central Elementary School were inequitable programming spaces, special education, art, music, library, computer labs, and cafeteria. These were all at a disadvantage compared to other schools. West Central is a 90-year-old building. With that comes 90-year-old infrastructure, particularly electric wiring and plumbing. We also looked at the site and the desired land needed for an educational facility to an elementary building. According to the data we looked at, it suggested 10 acres. West Central currently has 4.3 acres. And so we looked at that piece of property to ask, what are the options for that property? And some of the options considered were to maybe acquire some additional property to the north. But in looking at that, there were a couple of challenges to this. First of all, even if you could acquire property to the north, we don't know what the cost of that would be, but you'd have to get across 6th Street, which would likely mean asking the city of Joplin to permanently close that road. We also, when we looked at this property, found there was a railroad easement across it, and our understanding is when you have easements, you cannot build a building on top of those easements, so that presented several challenges. And then the property acquisitions.
The next school that we are looking at is Columbia Elementary. Priority concerns with Columbia Elementary include a lack of secure entry, also traffic control between buses and parent pickup as an issue, also emergency vehicle access that were needed, and then the current lack of a storm shelter, which, because the storm shelter is settling. Here's the front. This is a picture of the front entrance of Columbia. Although it does have a buzzer, you have to be buzzed in. Once you get past these doors, you have access to the entire school. We felt that that was a bit of a safety concern. Moving on into the settlement issues that we find in the storm shelter or the gym. This is a picture of a door on the south or on the east side that no longer opens due to the settling. Also see on the right side, you can see a large crack that's formed there in the storm shelter. Just to give you reference, the scale, that's a 3x5 note card held up over that same crack. And then there's a picture that's the same crack continuing up that southeast corner all the way to the ceiling. Other things that we saw the priority concerns with the property there at Columbia. The image addresses geotechnical concerns for the entire property for unsuitable soils and mining features. I think it's important that we point out the large purple area right there is indeed represents an underground mine. Continuing with priority concerns at Columbia, we see settling on the east end of the existing 1928 building. There's also settling, which we just saw in the southeast corner of the storm shelter, those pictures represented. And the site status, because of the geotechnical challenges, the site status likely eliminates any warranty on future repairs and construction. Because of the settling issues, the district consulted with Neil Tapana. Forgive me for mispronouncing that. He is a structural engineer, and this is part of the report that we received from Neil. I'm just going to read it. So regardless of the cause, the cracks that exist, and what I'm going to say, this is the old building too. So regardless of their cause, the cracks exist. In my opinion, the cracks do not pose a serious structural hazard at this time. However, they will most likely increase in severity and may at some time in the future compromise the structural integrity of the building. If the district intends to continue using Columbia Elementary beyond the next 2 years, I recommend the cracks be addressed. The first step should be a program to monitor the cracks and track the settlement of the building. And just skip down to the next paragraph. Although the settlement that caused the cracking probably cannot be reversed, the building can be underpinned to prevent further settlement, and a cost estimate for the underpinning the structure is beyond the scope of his investigation. He recommended that the district contact a micropile contractor. The district did contact or consult with a micropile contractor, and they got preliminary cost estimates. Just on the storm shelter alone, it would be about $380,000, and then on the old building, cost estimates of $580,000 to micropile the old building, neither of which will reverse the settlement issues, but only hope to prevent further settling. And just some examples of some issues we see with the settling. This is the first floor on the east side. You can see an obvious crack there in the window ledge on the first floor, also some cracking going below. Continuing on the same side of the building, but on the second floor, this is in a classroom. On the second floor, the south wall, that is the floor and the wall, the gap between the floor and the wall. That gap continues around the east side of the building all the way to the north side. So it's not just located in one spot. As far as monitoring the cracks and the settling, the district contacted or worked with somebody. Can we go to the next slide? Anderson Engineering. This report basically it shows that the cracks have been monitored since September of 2017. There's a lot of information in there, but really the report's just showing that the movement continues, that settlement is still happening. Some of the monitors that are being used there by Anderson Engineering, there's one there. You can go to the next slide. Other priority concerns outside of the structural issues at Columbia Elementary are inadequate classroom size. Again, the standard that's been adopted by the Board of Education is a 900 square foot standard. The classrooms are 651 square feet at Columbia. It also is inequitable for 21st century learning options for students, again, including that flexible learning spaces, lack of collaboration and project-based learning. It also faces many challenges for ADA accessibility. Continuing with priority concerns, it lacks programming space, or it has inequitable programming spaces for special education, art, music, library, computer labs, cafeteria, etc. We're dealing with a 90-year-old infrastructure at Columbia, as we are at West Central, and the severely inadequate site size to redevelop a new facility with current standards. Columbia currently sits on 2.7 acres, with the standard being 10 acres per school. Move to the next one. So all the options that were considered are for combining West Central and Columbia and address concerns that exist at both the buildings. The first option that the committee considered was combining Columbia and West Central at the current West Central site with a school for 450 students, the estimated cost of $18.5 million. The second would be renovating the old building at Columbia and having a new addition put on at the existing site there at F Street. For 300 students, an estimated cost of $15.2. Third consideration that the committee looked at was to raise the old building and construct a new one at the existing site for 300 students at a cost of $15.3 million. It's important to note that the site size, such as it is, only allows for a school of 300 students to be built there, which would require 100 students either from Columbia or West Central or from both to attend different schools. The fourth option that the committee considered was a combination of Columbia and West Central at a new site for a school of 450 students at estimated cost of $19.6 million. It's also important, real quick, to note, just go back there on that other one, that no new school has been built in Joplin for less than 450 students since Kelsey Norman was built in 1965.
So as we looked at the four options in front of you there, the committee sought to analyze those numbers to the number of students that could be served and try to make a decision of what's the best use of district funds, what would ensure the safety of all students, what would produce equitable learning environments, and what would provide equitable learning spaces and have the district still being fiscally responsible. And so based on the information that we presented tonight, as well as many other items of information we didn't have time to present, the committee came up with a summary recommendation as following. The first we've already covered was to construct a new addition at Kelsey Norman Elementary at a cost estimate of $2.875 million. In looking at Columbia and West Central, the recommendation of the Long-Term Facilities Committee is to construct a new combined school for Columbia and West Central at a new site for 450 students at an estimated cost of $19.6 million. Other recommendations that the committee would make to the school board to consider is to utilize a no-tax increase bond issue with the district's current estimated bonding capacity of $22 to $25 million. The committee also recommends that the Board of Education should consider the April 2020 election window for the bond issue. And these recommendations address both the oldest and the most problematic facilities and also eliminate all modular units within the district. Finally, our last recommendation would be this. It's important to the committee not to leave an abandoned building in the neighborhood to have who knows what would happen to that. And so we would ask that the Board of Education also consider that. This concludes the findings and the recommendations of the Long-Term Facility Committee. It's been an honor to serve, and we would ask for any questions that Josh or I might answer at this time.
David and Josh, thank you for that presentation. It's thorough, and we really appreciate the time that the entire committee put in. Does anybody have any questions for David or Josh?
Just curious on how much involvement you had from maybe parents, teachers, administration from these three schools that you kind of focused on. Did they attend meetings? Did they ask questions?
They did attend meetings. They asked questions. They had meetings outside of our committee meetings that we attended as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there was interaction.
So they had a lot of this information as well?
I don't know. They had a lot of the information. The information was given to us that we were to present to you all first before it was given to the public.
I think it was important to us that the recommendation not be heard by anybody else but the school board. And then after that, but and some of the information we received came in after some of the meetings that we had, and so the information came in at a various pace throughout the process.
But your meetings were open meetings, anyone could attend?
They were. I think at the one of them we had several people in attendance. Was it the which meeting was it? I think there was one here that there were several people in attendance, and then I believe there were some in attendance when we met at Soaring Heights Elementary School, and there were several people affiliated with Columbia Elementary School that were able to tour the building with us and at that time.
Does Columbia still have 2 modular units? Or do
Yes.
they? Okay. Thank you.
thank you for your questions.
Okay, so this is thinking outside the box. First of all, thank you guys to all the committee, because I know this was a thankless job.
A lot of time.
Yeah, but I do think this is a wonderful opportunity to get a new school at a no tax increase. We don't get that opportunity very often. So as you were touring the buildings, did you go to all buildings or just these 3 particular buildings?
We went to Soaring Heights, Irving.
Okay, so you went to some of our newer facilities?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm just wondering if we have this opportunity and we have this money, are there safety, and maybe this isn't for you guys as it is so much other people in the district, are there other safety things that we could put in place while we have this opportunity at all buildings? And I don't even know what I'm thinking of, but I'm just thinking it's a great opportunity, and I'm wondering if there's something, I don't really want to even say like, I don't know, I'm wondering if there's something we can do for every building when we have this opportunity, like
I think
just to keep guns out of our school, or...
I think safety is a
Yeah.
huge concern at all the schools, and I think that the board should always take that in very serious consideration.
In the 2020 to 2025, it seems like there was a heavy emphasis on safety, and those plans, I believe, are being put in place using current district resources. So as our understanding was, the resources are there to do some of the safety improvements, and what the resources weren't there for was for a new building or remodeled building. So it seemed like all those issues were being addressed.
Thank you.
Do we know the current enrollment at Columbia and West Central? I mean, you talk about a new facility for 450 students, but what is the current enrollment of those 2 schools?
I believe they're both right around 198 to 200. They're within a student. I think Dr. Skeda might have some more accurate numbers, but I believe that's what we're looking at.
Fluctuate between 198 to about 210, 212 at Columbia. And I believe West Central was around 190 in the school year. Is that right, Shelley? 195 from up to 212, yeah. I saw numbers fluctuating in that range.
I asked that today, and that's the numbers that I was
I
given.
think it's safe to say that both schools would be right at 400.
But now that would be, their numbers that have been declining in recent years, haven't
Yes,
their enrollment
they have.
numbers? Okay.
They have.
Because they both used to have a lot more than that.
They did, and the demographer told us that the northwest corner of town had declining, but projected a declining enrollment over the years. In fact, that came out before the tornado. That last demography report came out for the tornado, and he had projected that we would have flat at best or some decline in enrollment in this part of town.
So you guys feel like 450 allows for enough growth because you don't feel like there is much growth going on in that area?
And then if you have the 10 acres and the area does grow, you've got some room for some expansion or additions to meet additional growth. So the 10 acres gives you a lot of flexibility if that can be found.
That's out of the mining area.
Yes.
That could be difficult.
I was just going to say,
Do we know what went wrong with the FEMA shelter at Columbia? And, you know, everybody brings up what it's going to cost to fix, and several $100,000, and I don't know what the original costs were. But how did that building get built where it is structurally? I mean, was there structural engineers? Were there people that approved that site that, you know, core drilled that site?
Doctor, I can tell you that that has been presented to the board before you were on the board. Kyle Denham was kind enough to give the board an explanation. It's our understanding that Columbia, I believe, was built in 1927. I think the slide said 1928. Prior to its construction, we believe that there were houses along what would be the west side of where Columbia exists and where that shelter is. And so those houses would have been raised in order to construct Columbia. And there was fill put in what would have been cellars, basement, whatever, below it, in that area. And so there were geotechnical surveys performed. And while they did those geotechnical surveys, I don't believe that they detected the soft fill that was placed on where those houses previously sat. That may have been a guess as to whether that's where the houses sat or not, but the impression that Kyle had and communicated to us was that while the basements had been filled, they were not filled with and compacted with material that would be sufficient to hold the weight of those heavy panels that are used to construct our safe rooms. And therefore, we're having that settling. And
So the ground was not core drilled before they put the building on it?
I believe there were core drills.
Some soil board.
There were, but they did not detect the sufficiency, I guess, of what was needed.
Seems a little odd.
Well, a core drill will go down and you can bang right through a poured foundation, and whoever's running the drill will know how thick that rock is underneath. So when he goes through a foundation that's, say, 12 inches thick, it's going to poke right through. So even with core drilling, it could have showed it being a perfect site. The unfortunate thing is where the mine is sitting. Is what on the one side of Columbia where it showed a huge, a large portion of that, and I just don't see where, and I have kind of a hard time going in and being able to pin to something if there's nothing to pin to, would be my only concerns.
If everybody remembers, we were performing a lot of that bracing at the time and put a halt to that work because the initial attempts to
Pour the grout in the casings.
was unsuccessful. We found that we were going to be expending more than was originally thought, and so we stopped because we needed to step back and try to make a decision as to what our best option was going forward. And here we are today, receiving a report from the facilities committee.
I think one of the things that was interesting, we asked the structural engineer about that southeast corner, I believe, because there's a crack there now, but they said it's still safe from what we understood. What was alarming was the rate that the safe room is cracking. It even broke a monitor. So one of the questions was, if that crack on the southeast corner starts to expand, how quickly would it go? And they said, we don't have an answer. So the committee said, so if we spend $16 million to totally renovate that building, and what happens if that crack takes off at the same rate that the safe room does? Then we spent $16 million, and we have a building that's not safe because the same crack started again. And people looked at us and said, you saw it happen in the safe room, you had a warning sign it was happening here, and yet you spent and at that point, the money spent, and you have no bonding capacity for a while, so it's a real bind. If you bulldoze the building and start over, if we were to come to the school board and say, we recommend you build a new elementary school on a 2.7 acre tract, I don't know of anybody in education we could find that said that's an adequate size for an elementary school. And then as Josh shared, even if you did build a new elementary school on 2.7 acres, at best, the estimates given to us, it would only serve 300 students. So we haven't really served the needs of West Central Elementary. If we have 200 at each school, that's 400 students. And so a new school built from the ground up, assuming we could solve the mining issues, you still have 100 students that you couldn't serve at that site, and you spent all of your bonding capacity at one location. And so the question was, what do you do with those 100 students? Do you take them all out of West Central and do something, send them to a different school? Do you take them all out of Columbia and do you split? And how do you decide? These were challenges we didn't have answers for. And there's those are some issues that maybe perhaps the school board could look into, but they were real challenges for us in trying to come up with these recommendations.
Thank you, David. Well, as a Columbia guy, I mean, I certainly feel the pain of loving that site, and there's compassion there, and we certainly heard it from the members of our community. I have no idea what we're going to decide, but as a board member, I certainly appreciate the work from the committee. I served on the committee, but this is the first I've heard this report. I had no part in assembling the report, and I could tell that there was a lot of effort that was put forth in doing that. I thank the committee for that. And aside from that, I would ask for additional calls from our board to ask further questions. Otherwise, I'll let these folks go home.
The only other question, have you looked in that area? Is there a tract of land that could be possibly bought to leave the school somewhat in that neighborhood? Or is that something that needs to be looked at further?
That was something that we were not tasked with.
Okay.
That's for you all to debate
Give us
and.
a lot to think about.
Yes.
Obviously, that's a challenge because it is fully built. Everything between those two schools is occupied.
Kelsey Norman should be easy.
The proposal for Kelsey Norman is on site, is on the existing site.
Correct.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone that's on the committee.
Thank you, committee.
That brings us to our strategic plan updates for 2019-20. Dr. Moss?
Yes, sir. I'm going to hit some highlights on the action item. Joplin School Strategic Plan serves as the district's comprehensive school improvement plan, and it satisfies the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed requirements of the Missouri School Improvement Plan, which is MSIP 5. Our original strategic plan was adopted March of 2016, and it has changed very little in that time. I'm proud to say it's a living, breathing document that I became aware of quite early on as I joined Joplin Schools. And we look at this and we tie everything we do back to our 3 goals, and we even make note of that in our board packets of these are the areas of the strategic plan that these actions address. Teacher, parent, and student forums meet each quarter to review the district data and the strategic plan, and feedback is gathered from the forums and district leadership to guide changes. And at each one, we look in depth at one of the goals, and then at the 4th quarter, then we look and say, do we need to discontinue something? Do we need to add something? Is there a revision needed? And that's what you have in the example attached to this item. Administration recommends the board approve the 2019 strategic plan updates. And then if you look at your next item, which you've had time to review in your packet, again, you'll see minor changes. Most of these are semantic in nature. Under the evaluation methods, as we were talking about physical, emotional, and other aspects of student safety, you'll notice that they wanted to add some measures of behavior and attendance in the fitnessgram, which I think is appropriate. And then if you look back at goal 2, talking about adding a new subset, schools proactively communicating positive messages to the community. That came out in our forums very much, that they felt like we need to be telling our story better. And then on effective and efficient, they talked a lot about data-driven collaboration. We use the term PDSA a lot. Not everybody knows what PDSA stands for, so there was some clarification there. And just in support of what we heard tonight, a reminder, when we're demonstrating fiscal responsibility, the strategic plan adopted resources supporting high-performing classrooms, systemic, and balanced deployment of resources, and increasing efficiencies district-wide while meeting the needs of students. And this came out in our forums as very important to the groups. So that's a little bit of summary for a lot of little language through there, but I am very pleased that over the last 2 to 3 years, this has not changed much at all. And I think it's still meeting the needs of our district, and it's focusing on, in a summary, kids are safe, kids are learning, and we're being fiscally responsible. So administration would recommend that you approve these changes.
I move we approve the strategic plan for 1920.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dr. Ford. Thank you, Derek. It's been moved and seconded that we approve these strategic plan updates for 2019-20. Is there any further discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you, Dr. Moss. Moving to our accounts payable, Dr. Lankford.
In the information you received is on the computer, you have a complete list of every bill that's going to be paid or we're asking you paid. They all fall within the budget. And always what I like to do is take this list, bill totals $3.216 million, And again, to no surprise, the largest part is for salaries and benefits of staff, and then the other will be the incidental fund. It varies, and I will disclose right now, when you see this list next month, it closes out the month of June. As we are going over this, you're going to see some bills. For instance, last year, this same board meeting approved a bill list of $9.5 million because there were some accrued payrolls that were in there. Well, the accrued payrolls were not generated until Friday, and we try to get these ready by Wednesday. And so this is very much in line with our budget. And again, there's every penny is given to you as far as each check that is written to cover the expenses of the district.
Thank you, Dr. Langford. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Langford concerning our accounts payable?
I'll make a motion that we pay it.
Thank you,
I'll
Lord.
second.
Thank you, Deb. It's been moved and seconded that we approve payment of our accounts payable. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. That moves us to our budget adjustments.
If you'll notice, to my right is a person that's not been sitting with us at the table, but she's going to be starting to sit with us at the table simply because she's completed over a year in the district now. And I will say that considering the challenges the district had of moving to the coding systems of last year, and then as we're moving forward with a new budget, I just can't say enough about the dedication that she's shown on a steep learning curve since this time last year. So Shelley Toft is here, and she'll be sitting here. I see it from the 30,000-foot level. She's in there shuffling boxes all day long of getting this stuff, and the number of code changes and things that she had to do to make this work. So what we're doing, number one, is just presenting to you the final adjustments that we made to the current year, fiscal year 19 budget. And, you know, some school districts, and you can do this legally, I've never done it in my prior history, but we could go in and say we ask you to approve the actual expenditures as they will be reported. And because the key is with budget, revenue is information. Expenditure is subject to the approval of the board. And by law, we are not authorized. We cannot spend we cannot exceed in our expenditures what you have authorized. What we've done, and I visited with the auditors briefly a month or so ago, and you know, this keeps us all on our toes as to what's happening to a budget. A budget's nothing more than a best guess of where we are right now, looking forward 12 months, but we don't really know what we're getting this fiscal year until 1 year from now, on June 30th of 2020. I mean, that's just the way it works. So Shelley spent a lot of time, and we'd be glad to answer any questions. But the key thing would be the balance sheet that you have, which is, Vince, if you could speed past that. We have a complete listing of the things that we're showing that are the changes. If you could go one more and see what we have. This is the balance sheet right there. The only thing that will really be different, we were asked by the auditors to ask you to approve in our policy, which we did. We added, due to a Governmental Accounting Standards Board recommendation, of committed resources. So at the end of the year, you may have, at the end of the month, you may have certain monies in your bank account, but you know that you've got a house payment that's due, you know that you've got a car payment that's due. It's not all just at discretion. Restricted funds are very exact. For instance, our debt service is restricted only for the purpose of paying our debt and interest with associated debt. We've come in, and over the years, and I agree with this wholeheartedly, the money that has been donated to the school district for scholarships, those are considered restricted funds. But they ask us to take a look at committed funds. You have other funds that is at the discretion of the board, but you as a board have decided we're purposing this money. The best example I could give you tonight would be a couple of years ago when we recommended to you that we start making plans to pay off this Bank of America thing on June 1st of 2020. So we said we will put the school district's money in. We think we know what we're getting in the federal money, and we think we know what we're getting in the state money. Well, year before last, in the last fiscal year, we got most of our FEMA money in. We did get a subsequent payment this year, which is reflected in our budget. And this year, we got our state money in. So we have parked that money in an account, invested, committed to paying off these bonds. And we will have it budgeted when we ask you to present our next budget. So you will see a new terminology. Those are committed. The other thing right now that we have put there are student activity funds. If we have buildings that are raising money, that money is raised by the students for the purpose of the clubs and organizations. And so those are the two things that we have right now. So we have restricted funds. Debt service is the best example of that. We dedicated, and I believe that scholarship money should be restricted only to scholarships given to our students in accordance with the donors' wishes that have been given. And then the committed funds that you as a board agree, that's what we're doing. So the terminology is a little bit different. We did not, we've done a revision of the revenue, and we started out predicting $85 million that we would get in revenue. We wound up with $93 million. Well, we got our state funding in for the, the state emergency funds, because when FEMA closed, then we got the state money. And then we make other adjustments going through the year. So that's what we came up with. And we left our anticipated expenditures basically the same, subject to adjustments that were made. And so what I'm asking you is to approve these adjustments that we've tried to give you the information of what caused it. Now, we did an adjustment in February. We had done one in October. We will do an adjustment this coming September or October for the budget we approved tonight. We'll do another one in February, and then in June, there will be a final revision. But I can tell you that the school district finances will end the year very strong. But the key is we're asking you to approve this because this fully assures that we won't overspend your authorization level.
Thank you, Dr. Langford. And before we go further, I would like to assure Shelley Topp that she is absolutely welcome at our board, at our tables. Welcome.
In fact, I've offered to let her sit here, and I'd sit over there.
I understand. Believe me, I totally get that. So we're pleased to have Ms. Topp join us at the front. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Topp or Dr. Langford concerning these requested budget adjustments?
I have one
Yes.
question. So regarding activity funds, so let's say a school, they sell cookie dough, and the students are primarily doing that. And so that money goes into the activity fund to be spent just on students, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's say a school does a carnival, and teachers are required to be there and work that night too. Does that go to this committed activity fund to be only spent on students, or can that also be spent on students and staff because staff worked it?
Typically, the carnivals, and elementary principals can correct me if I'm wrong, are done by parent groups, and those funds oftentimes go to the PTAs, not to the student activities. Okay. So these are things that are done. But what we did do is we've set up a separate account because these are, as we report to the state, student activities are different than adult activities. Mm-hmm. And adult activities are not a cost to the educational program. So we've actually set up accounts to help the staff, if they have their fundraising, they have their account.
Okay. So is that a committed fund also then, or is that not a committed fund?
All the activity funds are rolled into the same bucket.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I would move that we approve the budget adjustments recommended above and listed below.
I'll second.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Deborah Gould. It's been moved and seconded that we approve these budget adjustments as requested. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. That moves us to item 5, which is preliminary budget for the 2019-20 school year. Again, back to Dr. Langford.
If you look in the past, the word preliminary budget has not been at this meeting. In visiting with our auditor, they suggested that we make it very clear that this is preliminary. So I like that idea. Sometimes school districts would adopt what was called a continuing budget, which you just take the budget you just approved for the prior year and say that's going to continue. And the whole purpose of having a budget in place is we cannot spend money that the board has not authorized us to spend money. So that's the goal of what we're trying to do. If you look at where we are of trying to set a budget in place when we've not even technically closed out this year, and we're trying to get it in place so that we can get it posted by last Wednesday, as Pat does, and so we get disclosure and transparency to the public, we will tell you that this budget will look much different 1 year from now, just as the one you've revised for the current year. We took basically what we stated as far as the fund balance, and that was our starting point. We made some adjustments in expenditures. We made some adjustments into revenues. And we have a budget message that if you looked at, we will try to make available. There are some things that are different about this budget. In the past, and we talked about this a year ago, and it's sure made life a lot easier as far as managing our budget was concerned. We said we need to get the health fund out of the operational budget of the school district, because we had the expense of the district for the premiums that were being paid, and then every time an expense or a claim was being paid, that was showing as an expense for the educational purposes. So we now have Fund 1, Fund 2, Fund 3, Fund 4, and Fund 9. And Fund 9 is a health fund. It's a standalone fund. The expense is shown out of Fund 1 or 2. The money goes into Fund 9, or the revenue is shown, and then the expense is all shown out of Fund 9. That cut our budget and when the public looks at our budget, we were overstating it because the expenses were in there twice, like we were spending $98 million, when in reality it might have been $91 million. So that helped us. Another thing that we did is we're taking a little different approach of what's been done in the past on the activity funds. We were starting with an expense, and now we're just simply making it revenue neutral. When we end this year, we start really refining this budget going forward. Whatever we have in student and activity accounts, that will be the revenue or the expenditure and also the revenue. So that makes it a revenue neutral effect. Another thing that we did, and Shelley had talked to the auditors, they requested that we do it, and we got it done toward the end of the year. But the Pell Grants, we have programs, our adult programs that get federal money for training. We were showing that as a revenue and expense. We don't do that anymore because that's money in and money out. We can't hold that money more than 3 days. I mean, we get federal money, it's got to pay out. That's just the way that works. So we've done that. So what we're trying to do is get this budget into where it truly represents our instructional educational programs. We also cut our expenditure budget by getting the Pell Grant out by $750,000. So when you look at the adult education program, it's not $2.2 million, it's 1.5 or whatever that number is in there. So we're trying to do some things like that. And another thing that we're going to do, once we get this budget operational, there's a lot that has to go on, get the payroll set up, but we're going to start every Wednesday morning. We're going to have a little session, and Shelley and I are going to go through, and we're really now, because the new codes are in place, we're going to, what I call, do a major scrubbing of the budget and get those expenditures more appropriately placed than they were, because our new codes didn't match up with our old codes. And if you'll look on, scroll through there just a little bit, Vince, the budget message is there. Let's go through, and we basically, there's our, stop right there, there's our expenditure, our projected budget. And I will tell you, I had a question from the news media tonight. It's showing that we have a $700,000 deficit. Well, I said I'm not worried about that at all, because we used this year's number, and I can tell you we did not spend our maximum, and we're going to be able to absorb that. And this budget's going to be much stronger when you see the next numbers that come out in October, and we get it all audited out in numbers. So, but that is a revenue statement that we're still holding our own. The big item is paying off the bonds. That inflates our expenditure by $10,250,000. But that was a planned expenditure, so we will save over $1 million by paying that interest out. So if you go on, we have an expenditure that we're showing is for our revenue that we're showing. This is where the money's coming from. That's how we get to the balance sheet. If you keep going, Vince, I want to get to the expenditure side. And let's see, go right here. Stop right here. we do a comparison of revenue. So you can look at, well, this is what we thought we got in local property taxes. These are our best guesstimates right now as we close out 19. And when we prepared this, those numbers were not exact because we didn't get one check until this week, So we're do the best you can. We can do that 3-year comparison on this, but then if we keep scrolling through to the expenditure side, I want to show you what we have. Because the auditors will come in and say, you don't have a 3-year comparison. I'm going to say, yes, I know we don't have one, and this is why. And if right here is our expenditure projection, we could give you about 100 pages. But what we're trying to do is by function show you what we're going to spend. For instance, elementary instruction, middle school instruction, high school instruction. These are all by function code. And where the money comes from, general fund, teachers fund, debt service, or capital projects for the total amount. So that lets you know, and we can give you supporting documentation. If you want to look at 100 pages, we can run that for you. We can run them the Alio intelligence, and that would be quite a read because it's a rather lengthy document. So if you'll keep going on down, Vince, and we go all through the budget, right here by every function code we have to the total expenditures. Now the next page should pop up. These are our comparisons. Stop right there. We do not have comparisons for fiscal year 18. Why? Because the coding structure that was in place in Joplin, it's one that had developed over many years. I'm not crediting it happened all over the state. There is no way we can line those code numbers and make it work without it just having some meaningless gaps in there. I actually had it at one time. It made no sense whatsoever. So if you'll scroll on through, these are all of those function codes, and whether it's general fund or special fund or debt service fund or those, that's all listed underneath. If you keep going, I want to go to the bottom of the page, so that we did make an effort to show you some exact numbers right there. We don't have it broken down by function, but we can tell you that 2 years ago, the expenditure was $131 million. You say, well, what in the world happened? Well, we refinanced some bonds that particular year, plus we were building the Early Childhood Center. And then if we roll backward, then we have our projection of our $99 million this year, which is about $10 million more than last year, I see, but take $10 million off of that, which that will be the refinancing, then that puts that preliminary budget, very much in line. So I've talked to, I did walk out with a little bounce in my step Friday afternoon because I really feel very good about where you are going to end up as a school district. And when you're talking about planning for the future, you cannot do that unless you really have kind of a grasp on what our capability is. And education is about resource allocation. And we only have so much money, so it's the district has been committed to allocating its resources very effectively. If you look at every school district in the state of Missouri that's our size or bigger, no one spends less than Joplin schools. So people might complain about overspending, but no one spends less than Joplin schools. Nor does anyone have a lower levy than Joplin schools if you take our size and above. And so we start comparing. Joplin schools have been very efficiently operated, and the goal is to do that and then make the best decision about the best resources going forward, with some commitments that you have as a board for some areas that we're trying to play some catch up in. And so, having said that, I really talked a little bit more at length, but we would ask you to, I know you've got access to this information, but we would ask you to approve the adoption of a preliminary budget for the 2019-2020 that's been explained by a brief budget message, shown by the information that calls for, that we're going to have some revenue next year, we believe, of about $87 million. Now, again, we're rather optimistic that that will get a little bit better when we see that the state is able to have their revenue, and then when we get our information from the county. And then we also will have an expenditure of in excess of $99 million, as is reflected in these documents here. And I would answer any questions, or attempt to, or Shelley can, any questions we have.
Thank you, Doctor. There's a couple things I got out of that, one of which was Wednesday will forever be scrub day for me now. And
Our goal is to have that done by December, because then we are starting the planning phase for next year.
And hopefully our media that is here in attendance tonight will pick up that we are faithful stewards of our finances, and that we are a district that operates on a frugal budget for our size.
Which is very true.
A comment, not a question. On the
Yes.
3-year revenue comparison, in 2 years, our earnings from investments went from $228,000 to $855,000. So thank you, administrative staff, for investing wisely. We knew that could happen.
Well, we had the opportunity, and I was on the phone with the folks today. Now, I will tell you, if you watch the national news, that there's some discussion about the Fed funds rate could go down. So our interest rates are going down, but the key is we have no control over that. What we have control over is making sure that it's invested. And Shelley and I talk frequently about that, and we monitor it very, very closely, and we've got a strategy in place that has worked very well as we go through the next several months till we start getting our revenue in.
Thank you, Doctor. Does anybody have a motion to approve the preliminary budget for the 2019-2020 school year?
So moved.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Dr. Ford. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the preliminary budget for 2019-20 school year. There being no further questions, please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. That takes us to the purchase of the new digital radio system for the district. Dr. Saketa.
Okay, Dr. Fort, to hopefully partially answer your question earlier, when you talked about safety and putting more things around the district, this is one of them.
Okay.
And this is in our capital outlay budget for next year. We had originally allocated some monies to go towards this purchase. So Mike has worked all summer, and he's worked very hard, and Jim Hounchel's been involved, Dave Hudd's been involved. Our technology department, Eric and Vince, have been involved because this is very technical, way over my head when it comes to the technical part, so glad to have those people around too. The main thing was to be able to talk in an emergency at every building and in every bus like that. So we could switch to a channel so that every building is in the loop, and that every bus, no matter where it's at within the district, in the district, not on a trip like, to Branson or Springfield or wherever a game may be, but to be able to talk to those buses at any one situation in case there was a serious situation happen, or just for regular communication purposes. So that was the approach. Jim Hounchl had looked at these 2 years ago and brought Motorola into one of our safety and security meetings. Some of you may remember that. And at that time, it was going to be significant, well over $100,000 just to get radios for some of the schools. And so Mike had this need as well with the buses, so we kind of combined forces together and made a determination that every bus would have a radio hooked up this way, and so would there be 2 at every school. Okay? Go ahead. I stole everything. Tell us how hard you work, Mike.
It has been something different for me as transportation director. There isn't a lot of technicality to it. I'm glad for Vince's input. He was very helpful, and Eric Pitcher as well. But that hasn't been an ongoing problem since I've been here. We have buses that the worst 2 places in the district are East Middle School and South Middle School, and that's because East Middle's about the furthest out, and South Middle's kind of drops down in the bottom there. So I can be, if the bus is at South, I can talk to it. They can usually hear me, but we can't hear them back. It's a broken message. We can talk to other buses or all the drivers. A lot of times we have to tell, hey, all drivers, be aware that this street's closed tonight. Everybody avoid that area, and it'll be for East Middle School drivers as well. And a lot of times they just keep on talking like I didn't even get on the radio, and I'm like, hey, I'm the director, I'm supposed to be having the airways. And I find out when I go drive a bus, and on one of those buses at East Middle School, and I get back and say, why did you talk over us on when you was driving the bus? We were putting this message out. Well, I didn't. And we found out that we're not getting a signal out to East Middle School 60% of the time. So that's a major problem. If we have a bus broke down somewhere in the district and we can't hear it, and the other drivers are still talking because they didn't know that there was a situation going on. The second problem is we hear Monette and Purdy Fire Department and Rescue very clearly all day long. They've boosted their signal somehow. I don't know how. Maybe there's a licensing issue somewhere. Talked to Walt, the guy that used to take care of our radio system. He said it's been that way for years, but they have a power booster that's causing us problems. So I can tell you when there's a 15-year-old boy that's fallen off his porch and they've called the ambulance and they're off on their way to get him, but I can't talk to my bus at the same time. So that's a major problem. And then when Jim Hounsell, I found out that he was, had been trying to get new radio systems. We had a meeting that Dr. Skeda called me into, and just that week, we had a situation at Irving where there had been a bank robbery, I think, across the street or something. This was last fall. And so they moved everybody into the safe room, I think, and they had a soft lock, or maybe it was hard lockdown at that time. It was right at go time. We're sending buses out. Now, we found out that was going on, and we were told to keep our buses away. But this went on for maybe half an hour or so, and our other buses going to Cecil Floyd were telling, well, there's a major thing going on with the Irving. And Chris Bozarth was like, well, why weren't we notified? That guy could be in our area, too. It's pretty close proximity. Then when I talked to Josh, and I think Sarah was in on it too, thinking that once they got into the safe room, there was nobody out there to man the phones to call the other places, and everybody was focused on them so much. So Jim said it would be really nice if each campus in the district had their own handheld. It was like the hotline emergency radio. And of course, we're looking at putting at least 2 at each campus now, so that they will work even in the safe rooms. And that's going to be a pretty major deal, because you're talking, I don't know how, Dave, you probably have to help on this, but how thick those walls are and the structure that's inside those walls, and it's hard to get out. So I put out, I think, an RFI earlier this year to get some idea and some budgetary numbers, and we got 2 main radio companies to come back, Motorola, or Radiophone out of Springfield, and then Kenwood, I think it's RCS is their main company line. And they both shot us some numbers on that, so then we kind of adjusted and seen what are the ways we could adjust it. We were looking at a whole district-wide system and wondering how they were going to do that. We looked at towers and water towers, and a lot of those didn't want to help us out really around the area. They was going to charge us quite a bit to use those. So both companies are looking at putting in repeaters around the district. We currently have no repeaters, which is one of our problems. We have a little base radio there at the transportation office with a 60-foot tower that just doesn't get out. So one proposed doing like, I think, 17 repeaters, and the other come up with 5 sites with 2 repeaters at each site. So there are school campuses around the district that they're looking at putting those in, that they believe will, well, they actually did a site walkthrough and testing. This is like the second time they've done testing in our district. They came 2 years ago and did a whole site walkthrough and testing, and gave us preliminary ideas then of where we were going to need to put these repeaters. So that's what we come up with. We did the RFPs a couple weeks ago. We got those back the other day, and you can see the numbers there. The Radiophone did come up with, I think, obviously the better value. On this, in the RFP, we were looking for a base system, or the solutions for quality, value, expandability, reliability, interoperability, open architecture, as well as the pertinent factors. And the chosen vendor would be the one out of all these that qualified with those the most. So value was number 1 we looked at, but their solution was the best. And if Vince wants to chime in, he can kind of tell you how it works with the IP Connect, but it's not just an antenna on the top of those certain buildings, but it also hooks into it's IP Connect, Internet Protocol. Go, Vince.
School district computer backbone that ties all the buildings together, so that if you're a far site across the city and you're not able to hear directly, the signal gets retransmitted by sending it across our computer network from building to building.
So we would have more connectivity than just through antennas and worrying about those not reaching. Any questions about all that? Certainly, safety is the number one feature of this.
I'm glad we're finally doing this.
A long time coming.
They're Motorola. They are Motorola. Okay. And Radiophone is the company, kind of the company that puts the systems together from Motorola. They're out of Springfield. I believe they have Springfield schools and Republics and a couple other big systems that they give us references and experience from other school districts.
Why do you think there was $70,000 difference in the two bids?
Well, one is because Radiophone we asked for a site walkthrough before they give us their proposal. Radiophone's now done at least two. So they went out and actually tested to see where these things would work from. The Kenwood system, they've never been here for a site walkthrough. They used, I think, Google Maps and other things to just gather data, and then they wanted to put a repeater at every single campus. At one time, I believe it was 2 per campus, so there was nothing more they can do. That would be an IP Connect system as well, but they were just going to flood it with all these repeaters, which costs to be so much higher.
Well,
so without doing the site walkthrough, which was a requirement for the RFP in that.
How are we assured that the other system will work?
The one that we're proposing
Right.
here, I believe because of their walkthrough that they've done, the site walkthrough and the testing, they gave us site maps to show us the coverage. There were a couple of 2 places that the only coverage that they couldn't guarantee were the handhelds inside of Irving Safe Room and I believe at East Middle. So they're proposing this many repeaters at those sites with the possibility of moving one of those sites once they install it. I think they're going to put in the first, if I remember right, 5 repeaters and test that system and see how their coverage is, and then determine where the 6th one will need to go in order to make those places be covered as well.
And you're approving for 6 with the test to see if we need the 6th one or just go back to 5.
Well, did you ever think about having the other Kenwood people bid exactly what the other people are bidding to just see if the price is fair? It was a little bit concerning that you only had 2 bids and you put out a 3rd bid and they didn't even send out a bid. So you got 2 bids, it's got 70,000 difference, and they're not even comparing apples with apples.
Right. And we did the best that we could.
And we gave them a spec. We gave them a spec, and that was part of it. Come to the site, do what you can to make sure that we want to get coverage, but we don't want to pay for coverage we don't need also. And that was the charge in the specification, right, Dave? We were all involved in that, and they, in our opinion, they just tried to oversaturate the area.
Yeah, but what if your other system doesn't work?
Well, that's why we're testing. That's why we're going to continue to test until, we're not purchasing until the test is complete.
And you can only have 2 companies that you can get bids from when you're spending
I had a third from
180 to 250?
From St. Joe, Missouri, but they dropped out at the last because they said the distance between here and there.
We don't have any control over who bids.
No, it's just like buses.
Whoever's interested sends a bid. We don't
Well,
have
and
control over that.
We had 4 actually.
We
We had these 2. We had the local CDL company.
Yep, CDL, we've
They were
asked
also
them.
Motorola, and then the one out of St. Joe.
What about their bid?
They didn't turn one in. And we thought we were going to get a bid from them the first time. The first time we bid this, GPS was part of it. So what we've decided is to pull GPS out of it for the buses, and then relook at that through a different type of vendor or an add-on at another date. So that's why it's lower.
And both times, I spent a lot of time with Kenwood to get that first round of proposals for the GPS and radios, and they were going to give us a bid, and they talked it all up, and we just spent, I think, 3 different meetings. And then when we had the day to show up to give them, they didn't bring one. They never showed up. This time, we pulled all that out, and I went with more of a direction of what, because they were thinking that, well, maybe the way I put line items out on the first one in a bid, that we were just looking for a Motorola radio system. So we went even more of a distance to make it more generic. We are proposing, this is what we know, this is the problem, And each company, please give us your solution to this problem. Here's the parameters that we have. And then they came back, they did drop off a proposal at the office, and I never seen them on the day that we wanted the companies to be there that were giving the proposal to explain why their system would be that much higher. They never showed.
What guarantee if the system gets put in, what if it doesn't work? Are you, I mean, or do they have to make it work with that, or are they going to upcharge you?
Well, that's why we've got the actual sixth repeater in there, because sixth site, I guess, that we proposed in this. It's very possible that they won't even need that. They're going to put in the 5 sites first, test them, and we know that those are going to be covered. Irving's really the highest one that may not be covered in that system. So if it is not, then they go ahead with that 6th site. If it is covered, then we won't even need the 6th one. We'll come even need lower than the price that we have.
I think, Mike, though, the real question is the warranty that it will work.
Yeah.
What is the...
Well, we feel comfortable based on all the testing that they've been involved with, the coverage maps, and also the live testing that they've come in with from all the sites. So yes, we do feel comfortable, and we're not going to pay.
But what's the warranty?
Well,
I mean, you get it and it doesn't work. I mean, I understand you're
Yeah.
comfortable with their
Well,
data and their
we have an
figuring,
agreement.
but what if it doesn't work?
But that could be with any company.
we have an agreement, and if the agreement's not I mean, if they can't prove up, then they have to make it right, because that's what they're selling us for.
Is that
They're
written in the
selling us.
contract?
Yeah, that will be in the agreement.
That if it's not right, then
Yes.
they'll make it right for that price?
They have to make it right, because that's what they sold us
Just make
on,
sure
and that's
it's
what
in
we
the
spec'd in,
agreement.
and that's part of it, yes.
Yeah, I don't want to come back here in 3 months saying, well, it did work,
Agreed.
and we paid them $178,000, and here we are. So I just make sure somebody looks that contract over
Yeah.
and make sure that we are guaranteed.
I would move that we approve the purchase of the new digital radio system proposed by Radiophone in the amount of $184,821.86.
I'll second that motion.
Before you guys vote, Carrie, I think you determined that you can fit it in the budget. It doesn't require a budget adjustment, correct? Okay.
Thank you, Brennan. Thank you, Derek. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the purchase of these radios. And I believe in the notes it indicated there may be a funding for this project will come from the 2019-20 capital outlay budget and may require a capital projects budget adjustment, but Dr. Langford just mentioned that it would not. Is that correct?
Right now, there's not the feel, it's my understanding that they would fit within the budget that we have.
So
but
in the
you
notes-
achieve some other savings.
Thank you, Doctor. So in the notes that we were provided, we were informed of this possibility, and currently we believe that will not be a problem. So with that information before the board, I ask for you to vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you all very much.
Good work.
Dr. Saketa will keep you there talking about freezers and coolers.
Okay, Rick's going to give you a lot more detail, but obviously, things wear out over the years. And we had one particular school I think that we need to solve some problems with and then make sure we have backups.
Towards the very last week of school, we had 2 freezers go down at West Central Elementary School. So the maintenance guys had patched one of them, got it to work, and he says, I don't know how long it's going to last. So we went out to bid for 2 reach-in refrigerators to update the, I think the Hot Point and the other 2-door freezer. He said we're definitely the oldest in the district by about 30 years. That one unit was probably closer to 40 years old. And then we looked for replacing some of our milk coolers. We have a contingency of 2 or 3 milk coolers at the warehouse in case one goes down. We can then take that and bump it out to a school. What we'll do with the 3 new ones, put them out in service immediately, and then take the 3 old ones that we have and put them at the warehouse as our backup. I do believe the last school auction, we had maintenance staff look at all of our equipment, deem it unrepairable. So we had several pieces of equipment at the last auction. We're just looking to replace those. and also looking for additional refrigerated space as we maybe expand our after-school program to a supper program at our elementary schools. So not all of our elementary schools will have enough refrigerated space to handle the suppers. So,
Thank you, Rick, for that report. Does anybody have any questions to Mr. Tinkle concerning the purchase of freezers and coolers?
I would make a motion that we purchase these from 5-Star Food Equipment.
I just got a question.
Sure.
Who is 5-Star?
I'm sorry.
Who is 5-Star?
5-Star is north of Joplin on 43 or Main Street. Chris and Jennifer, formerly Hobart, or
Thank you, Dave. It has been moved by Lori that we accept this purchase. Did I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Derek. It's moved and second that we approve the purchase of freezers and coolers as presented. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Now we go back to Dr. Moss. Before we start electing people, I would like to return to item 8 that was previously on our consent agenda. That keeps us with Dr. Saketa. That's a frontline absence and sub-management software, AESOP extension. That's an extension of an existing contract, I believe.
Yes, annually we have to pay for the service, and as you probably know, we use the service to track all of our absences, employee absences, and also for substitutes to log in and be a part of that system as well. Sarah knows a lot more about the system because obviously the HR department works with it more on a daily basis. But it is a very handy system for us, and there's a lot of data that's being pulled into it all the time, and it takes care of a lot of man hours that we used to have to put into place years ago.
Thank you, Dr. Saketa. I will mention to the board that the renewal is $16,836.65 annually. I open the floor for questions.
Kerry, I'm curious, are there any conversations about outsourcing, like through PenMac or?
Yeah, when Dr. Ritter was here, probably early on in my tenure in this job, we had a company, I know the name of it, I'm off the top of my head right now, I'm from Springfield, and they came in, and what we looked at was what the cost was going to be for that outsourcing substitutes and what we were paying for the service as well as our folks in human resources, and we were a little bit less at the time. And at the time, I don't know that we had a big issue with the number of substitutes. I do know there are times that it's difficult to find substitutes teachers, and also substitute teachers are probably in short demand in a lot of places. So, but no, we haven't talked, unless Sarah's had some conversations that I'm not aware of with, or met vendors at different places lately.
One thing we've done with substitutes this year is thinking of that PDSA and constantly trying to look at how we can improve. So I did reach out to PenMac specifically. While we do have our own system, and Aaron Peregrine is the one who is on that in the mornings trying to make sure that we get jobs filled. And some data that I pulled reflects it's not so much the 2 to 9+ days out filling our sub jobs, it's that 0 to 1. Those are I turn it in the night before or at 3 o'clock in the morning, some of those that are coming up unfilled. So I reached out to them to ask if they would consider a dual, we'll run our system like we do, but you help us pick up those last minute absences we're struggling with. And that is not something that they were interested in doing. So as far as fill rates, I ran some reports. The good thing with Frontline, we can run national. We can also run to Missouri. So recently I've been looking at that. Substitute is a nationwide problem as far as fill rates and getting those taken care of. Nationally, we're in a better place than those who use the system on a national level. But even in Missouri, there's a couple of things that I've pulled out of the data that we've looked at. One is we're going to continue working on hiring more subs. So we've tried some recruiting efforts, so we're going to continue increasing that. Justin is coming on board officially Monday, but already been brainstorming on some different avenues to touch some substitute potentials that we've been using the Facebook social media platform. It's much more techie and in the trend than I, but looking at Instagram and some other platforms that potential college students and those that may be interested would be more apt to realize that they could be a substitute teacher. So looking at a substitute employee ratio that will be more favorable for us. We've added some, but continuing that, as well as that 0 to 1, how we deal with that 0 to 1 day absence. That's where we're getting hit the hardest, I would say, as far as fill rates go. But it's definitely a national issue that we're dealing with.
Is it possible, Sarah, it's easy for me as a substitute to just not look at my computer to see what's open. It was hard as a substitute when Dion called you and begged you, please come in. It was hard to turn Dion down. So to fill that 0 to 1, could we have a person,
Instead of
every
Pinback
morning
doing it,
said,
let's do
here
it
are the
ourselves.
subs that aren't working, here are the classrooms that are still opened, and someone calling and begging?
So Erin does that when she comes in the morning. So she will leave, and she is a classified hourly employee. So she will leave and track that when she leaves in the evenings of where we're at. And typically, we're in the 90% range. And then when she comes back at 6:30 in the morning, it will be closer in the 80% range. So she will work a lot with our building secretaries, making contacts, seeing who's available, who's not available. A lot of our principals, and I've encouraged them this year, start building their own network, especially with their business partners and their faith-based partners, of who they have that would be willing to support their classrooms. And so we have, between Erin making phone calls, our building secretaries and our principals reaching out, and even our teachers connecting with those that they know will fill. The problem is a lot of the people that we have connected to fill those jobs are already signed up to fill other jobs in the district on a given day.
So can they get a list like in the morning that says, here are our subs that aren't working today?
Yes,
so that they just have a short list to call instead of, oh, there's 200 subs and I'm calling every one of them.
Yes, so there's a feature in Frontline to where you can click on available subs, and so you can see for that given day any sub that is available. I will tell you, it's good, but it also hinders the districts. Frontline moved to an integrated system this year, and so what they do, a lot of our region uses Frontline, so Carthage, Webb City, Carl Junction, Neosho. If they're using Frontline, substitutes that sub in multiple districts can log in with one login and see all the district openings available to them. So that's made it nice for the subs, but then we're competing even more than we were before with our surrounding districts as far as sub-fill rates, because they can see everybody at once versus before they had a different login for every system. We do have a way to track how many subs sub in multiple districts. That report is in Frontline as well. It's not as many as you would anticipate. I think the last time I ran it, it was around, I want to say it was 60 some out of the over 200 that we have. So I think the big message, and Justin and I have been working and talking about this as well as Erin, we're going to work really hard to recruit more subs so our ratio to employees to substitutes increases, and just being really smart, including the phone calls and the connections of how we do that, but being really smart of how we're scheduling and tracking the data as far as substitutes that we don't need necessarily, things that can wait for another event when we're looking at activities.
I'd really like to know what the national trend is as far as subs. Because this isn't just a problem we've had this year. This has been an ongoing problem for years. So if you don't understand, we have kids coming to school, to a classroom that has no teacher or no sub. And we're taking a special teacher out of another area to come in and fill, or the principal's going in to fill. Someone else is being pulled in. We're putting two classrooms together because we don't have a sub. That's a real problem. I haven't been happy with ASOP because I don't feel like it does the job from what we were used to, the way we had it. It's not okay that we have classes that aren't filled. It's not our teachers' fault. Are we utilizing our retired teachers as substitutes?
So we are using retired teachers as substitutes. One thing that I have worked on this year, especially as it relates to subs, retired individuals who may leave and come back, we've had a lot of discussion with the ACA and that 26-week separation. That has been an issue that we have had. That's another transition topic that Justin and I are working on.
So if they retire and they want to be a sub, they can.
Yes.
They just have to wait.
Well, they have to, where we're making some administrative adjustments, they have to wait for their retirement check. So that is non-negotiable. They have to make sure that they're in the retirement system. But when we would allow that $550 to start, for them to start subbing for us, we are looking at reaching out to them and getting that started sooner more than later. The issue you run into with retirees, and if you look at our data when we hit that February timeframe, flu was bad this year as well, but they run out of their $550. So that's another issue that we constantly have to look at as well with semester hires for substitutes, because a lot of our really good subs who will come every day or work their $550 just as soon as they can, when those start falling off towards the end of the year, then that becomes problematic as well, especially when we look at different opportunities, sporting events that may take teachers out of classrooms.
I just feel like we have to make sure that we're utilizing them to the best of our capability. Because I know there are a lot of retired teachers that would love to sub, but they never hear from us. That's what I hear. So,
And we have a lot of students that only at Southern that go 2 days a week or they go 3 days a week. So maybe come out to Community Day, which is a recruitment day, and maybe post jobs on Higher Lion at Southern.
Right. And we've been working with, I don't know if you're aware, but the teacher ed department specifically, Monday and Friday, when they hit that methods semester, they're available. Now, they don't necessarily say go sub at Joplin schools, but what I've been doing this year is going out and speaking to those classes and able to plug substitute opportunities to teacher education.
and we share that information as well all the time.
Yeah. Higher Lion would be, I know Matt runs on the back end of where we're posting things, so we'll make sure we're posted on
I just
there
want to
as
make
well.
sure that it's worth it to spend this money, because we still have classes that aren't covered, and that just, bugs me to no end.
Right, yeah. And I think this is definitely, as Dr. Moss and I visit this week, as far as personnel goes, this is definitely a high priority moving into next year. I think we have a good idea to put some more strategies in place, but something that we've got to continue working on. I would say the silver lining, when I'm running numbers compared to national and Missouri, we're trending a little better in a lot of areas, but our ratio of subs to employees is something that I've picked up in data that we need to improve on.
By that, I meant more of what are other school districts doing across the nation? Are they all using computerized subsystems? Are they doing it the old-fashioned way? You know, what other ideas are out there? So,
yeah,
just interesting to see. But anyway, sorry, I'm prolonging the meeting.
Do I have a motion to approve the purchase of frontline absence and substitute management system?
I would move, that we approve the purchase of ASOP.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Brent, seconded by Derek, that we approve this purchase. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you. That moves us to item 10, previously on the consent agenda. We will stay with Ms. Mwangi. That's the student service salary schedule correction for the 2019-20 school year.
And we have one other adjustment that we need to make that we discovered in putting in salary schedules. We have one that's off a penny, so we want to officially correct the clerical one as well.
So that plus, and reason for us pulling that off and just giving that added penny, as well as tech intern, making sure that they get put on the schedule, is why that was on consent this evening.
I move we pay these people.
So it's an adjustment to that plus to the clerical salary.
Clerical 2310.
we have 10-month secretary, 11-month secretaries, and 12-month secretaries. They all make the same hourly rate, just don't work the same number of months. And the computer operator, which was me, did not have those cells talking to each other appropriately. So we need to adjust that, in my opinion.
I'll second.
Who made that motion? Thank you, Dr. Ford. Thank you, Brent. It's been moved and seconded we approve this change. Thank you for the explanation. Please vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, and that brings this meeting gloriously to the point of closure, I believe.
Chair Kim.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, folks. We're going to appoint our treasurer, Dr. Moss.
Yes, well, according to state law, the board shall, on or before the 15th of July each year, appoint a treasurer. And despite the egregious error that was just disclosed of a penny, we would still recommend that the board approve the appointment of Dr. Ron Langford as board treasurer.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Derek.
I'll second.
Thank you, Deborah. It's been moved and seconded that we approve Dr. Langford as our board treasurer. Please vote.
I don't know.
That's okay.
Yes,
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
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 We have one more.
Yes. Did Dr. Joseph vote?
Yes.
He did? As we move on to our next appointment of board secretary, I will say that in every organization that I'm a part of, treasurer and secretary are the two positions that nobody wants to serve in. Let's go to Pat.
Well, in the same spirit, administration recommends the board approve the appointment of Pat Waldo as secretary.
I move we appoint Pat Waldo as secretary.
Go ahead.
They're fighting over.
Ms. Musser
Do you still want us, Pat?
has moved and seconded that we approve the appointment of Pat Waldo as our secretary. Please vote.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
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 Yes, and I thank them for their service. That does bring us to plus deltas, and I will offer that I appreciate everyone's interest tonight in the, not the primary part of our meeting, but a significant part that brings a great deal of public interest. I assure you that the information is well received and that your board will take it, digest it, and try to come to a wise conclusion, and we will continue, I believe, to solicit your input on all these very difficult issues. Are there any other plus deltas? I want to thank the committee for their service because that was quite a presentation, and the public for their willingness to speak because their opinions matter to us, and we realize that they're passionate about the decisions that that are before us.
I want to add, I'm thankful, and I think our district should be just pleasantly pleased that anytime a board member asks a question, we just have quality people, and they answer the question with just tons of information. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's Mike or Dave, or I know Stephen, Dr. Gilbert didn't say anything tonight, but he usually does. He's, Ron or Carrie or Sarah, Dr. Moss, it's amazing to sit here and just in your presence with your wealth of knowledge and information, and it's a good place to be. So that's a plus.
Come on, there's got to be some deltas here, folks.
It's
How about
Steve's
it took
last
too
board
long?
meeting.
It's whose last?
Oh.
You're going back to high school, buddy.
Hence the quietness.
Yeah, we're sending you back to school. All right. We're
We
very
have
blessed to have you
frequent
take
high school
that.
action items that require.
Yeah.
He'll still come see us.
And certainly having an additional person sitting at the table.
I'm getting. I'm taking that with me.
Just in case you forget who you are.
Well, I would entertain a motion that we adjourn then.
So moved.
We're having fun.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Please vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, that's why it's there.